Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 206th episode, we have a very special guest and longtime friend of the show, Bradley Dick from ELLKAY. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I'm glad to be back. It's been a while.
It has. So obviously a lot going on out there. So first of all, how are you, the family, and all that?
We're doing well. It's been a real adjustment. With everybody working from one place, and the kids' schools are all remote. So it's a very interesting change from the normal flow that we were going to. I had recently moved to a work from home arrangement with ELLKAY, which I'd never had before. So just kind of like getting into that flow, and then we get the pandemic. So it's been challenging, but it's definitely, we've gotten the good family time. So it's not going to be like those people that look back like, I never saw my kids. I was like, I saw them for 6 months straight, pretty much.
Exactly. No, I agree. I think we're in a similar boat where, this is completely different, but thoroughly enjoyed it and saw it as an opportunity. And I think most of my guests are saying the same thing as you, and as I feel is it's a great opportunity to reconnect with the family. Hopefully they're as blessed as we are. And so far, everybody that I've come across really is, and they've enjoyed their family time. So very cool. And I love having friends on the show because, you're out there every single day, and you know how and where this industry is evolving. So let's kind of dive in some of and I want to cover the good and the bad. I think that's something important. Obviously, a lot of great things happening, but also I'm really starting to see some areas that are starting to bother, concern me, and certainly concern me for other people's futures. And so I want to, I look forward to diving into that and covering some of that. But certainly, let's start off with some of the good and your background. I know you very well. You've been one of my closest friends for a very long time. But share a bit more about your background, where you're from, where your background in CIO and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, so I actually grew up right outside of DC in Northern Virginia. Probably a lot of people in the audience are very familiar with that area. I moved here following my then girlfriend, Kimberly, who you know very well, and now my wife. We moved here in '99, and it's just Atlanta's just been such a great city to live at, especially, over the past 20 years. What we've seen change in the city has just been spectacular. My career, it was about technology. I loved technology. I loved the way that computers worked, the way that systems worked. It was just ingrained in my psyche. It was just one of those things that just made sense to me. So I started very early working with a company called Definition 6. We did a lot of web development, that type of stuff. Then kind of pivoted that over to a consulting company, which moved me towards healthcare, which is when I became CIO of Resurgence. Which was back in 2000, was it 2007, and from there, that's kind of started my healthcare journey, and it was very enlightening to kind of see. I've had the fortuitous luck to be in the right place at the right time when there's been a significant changeover in technology. So, when I joined healthcare, there were not EMRs at most places. They might have had a practice management system. So there was a lot of changes from a technology perspective, and I really got to kind of see that coming in the front end. So it's been a really amazing journey to see where we are today from where we were when I first joined. I'd say the healthcare community. I spent 13 years at Resurgence as CIO, and just wanted to try something a little different. And I've been with ELLKAY since last September, and working primarily there on strategy and business development.
Yep. Excellent. I do want to say thank you very much. You've been an active participant in my think tank almost since the beginning, if not the very first one. So, your insights and perspectives is always a highlight of, the think tank and the community that we serve. So thank you so much, my friend, for that as well.
I appreciate it. Trust me, it's definitely one of those give gets, and it's probably one of the best give gets that I have, because I'm glad that I can add something to it, but the audience, the members, the participants, I always leave there with something that I need to run and go do or go learn more about. So that's always what I'm looking for.
Cool. So following that, and thank you for that. So following that track, and similar to the think tank style, is we're about getting together, a bunch of 60 to 80 collective minds at any given instance, and looking for best practices and strategies to successfully navigate the future of healthcare, and from all different perspectives and very broad diversities. And so regarding that, and we'll dive into some specifics around care providers and innovators a little bit later on in the show, but from a high level, what are you seeing out there? I mean, you're out there, you're talking to lots of people, hundreds of people on a regular basis. So certainly, via Zoom and safe ways to do it. But what are you seeing out there at a high level?
Well, I think we're starting to see a really interesting changeover. I'm trying to think, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we really started seeing everything was mobile, and it was mobile care, mobile this. The analogy I like to use is, when was the last time you said, go get my mobile phone? You said, you say, get your phone now. It just becomes ubiquitous. And I think that that's really the changeover that we're starting to see. And, we're hearing a lot of these terms like tele-this, remote this. I don't think it's going to be tele-this or remote this. It's just going to be, that's how you get your care. It's not going to be telemedicine. It's going to be medicine. It's not going to be remote patient monitoring. It's going to be patient monitoring.
Yep.
Because I believe that that's the direction out. That's the direction that we're seeing this industry going. Because we're finally able to realize a lot of the limitations around bandwidth and adoption that has unfortunately been pushed by the recent pandemic, but it's really kind of changed the way we engage in care in this industry.
Mm-hmm. So following that track, and I agree with you completely. So, and you and I were talking a little bit offline here before the show, and in my previous show, I covered this a little bit more in depth, but I am concerned with kind of a bifurcation in the industry and like Gaventa's theory of power and powerlessness, where you have the have and the have-nots. And what I'm seeing, though, is larger health systems or hospitals or even practices, say 25 MD and above, those groups are really charging forward with integrated telehealth, integrated with their remote patient monitoring and other care strategies. And these smaller practices, the 5 doctor groups, even the 10 doctor groups, which is not small in some parts, but in the grand scope of healthcare, we consider them a smaller practice. And even certainly the 1 and 2 doctor practices, they did adopt telehealth in some ways to keep themselves alive and being able to care for their community and their patient panels. But they're usually using a disjointed or unintegrated product and have a very disjointed care strategy. And it's really unfortunate because I am watching these larger institutions thrive and really get a leg up strategically. And I just want kind of fairness for everybody. Certainly, if they take the time to listen to this radio show, listen to my guests going, hey, we want to hear what's happening. Well, what's happening is these fully integrated platforms, virtual care is real, telehealth is real. The stats all show how patients love it. Care providers can use it. It can be integrated into your overall care strategy. It shouldn't be a third prong or an unintegrated prong off to the side. It's not going to go away. Medicare is going to fully reimburse for it. The care plans are going to further reimburse for it. So more rules are going to be relaxed, over a period of time. So I just want to make sure that everybody sees that, because again, these larger health systems and practices are going in this direction, and I don't see the smaller ones doing it. I know why. I get it. They don't have the time, they don't have the bandwidth, they may say they don't have the money, but I'm like, how can you not do it? And I don't mean Zoom. I mean a product that's really integrated into your care design, into your care strategy. Not using the FaceTime or Zoom or some other product that's ancillary or not integrated into your EHR or integrated into your virtual care platform. So that's one of the things that I'm really concerned about. But what do you see out there in some of those areas?
So, I completely agree. I think one of the things that we're really, challenges a lot of them is that, when you can have the scale, or when you start seeing the 20 doc practices, you'll start seeing where they'll have some additional resources at their disposal. They didn't just, outsource their technology to, a hosting company or a managed services company. They'll actually have some intrinsic skill sets around the technology, which can kind of help them in the direction. And I think that that's one of the big challenges, is that it's technologists are not cheap. Right. And there's a pervasiveness of, we go out and we buy something and we spend a lot of money, but where's my where is the actual improvement in care? I still take this back. We were sitting in one meeting, and I was when I was the CIO at Resurgence, and I was pitching a technology that we were looking to implement, and one of the doctors in the room said, "Wow, I can't believe this. This is really gonna, have a positive impact on my delivery of care." And I said, "That's great," but the fact that you just had to kind of qualify that really kind of, I think, expresses the distrust that there is, especially in the provider community of technology.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of the challenges lie. And you're 100% right, because I mean, there was the, hey, let's survive by, what's your number? What kind of phone do you have? I'm going to FaceTime you, and that's going to be the care delivery. Right. To, let's actually have a not telehealth, a health platform that you can see people remotely and engage them. Because I mean, that was that was a challenge. So I mean, really making sure that you have aligned with it. So I mean, what I would say to come back to is a lot of the directionality of what the practices, especially the smaller ones, are, they're based on what the EHR vendor is pushing them towards, or what the EHR vendor has. The EHR vendor is probably a significant portion of their IT budget or their IT spend, and it's all about making sure that that these solutions, and I think that we can get into that when we talk to the upcoming regulations, but ensuring that there are abilities for systems to be interoperable, because that's where a lot of the challenges come into. Is we want these technologies, we want these solutions. Our EHR, practice management system, is kind of the system of record, the main point, but that data needs to get somewhere to these other systems, and we need to be able to deliver care in a mechanism that doesn't add so much overhead. Because that's kind of the other challenge.
Right. So that's actually my hot button, which you did not know that because we did not discuss this recently. But I actually picked up the phone and called the ONC last week because I was so frustrated with, and I'm going to do a radio show on this, and I'm going to get the ONC to join, then also some other visionaries and luminaries from the industry. Probably would love to have you join if you would do it. But I'm going to start shining a spotlight on integration and interoperability, because all I see is inhibitors. All I see are people and strategies that limit interoperability, make it so expensive or barriers so high or so complex, and it doesn't have to be. And I think we need a spotlight. And this is what I told the ONC. I said, we need a spotlight on this. I want you to come on and read about just their public comments that they got from care providers. Let's give them an additional voice. My radio show will be an additional voice for care providers and health systems and doctors and companies who want to interoperate, who truly want to interoperate, and then where are the holdups and the glitches and the hangups and the roadblocks, because they're out there. And I've been doing this now for a year with my mouth closed, just shut, heads down, trying to create interoperability, and it's extremely difficult. And it doesn't need to be this difficult. It's made this difficult intentionally. So yes. It's very, and I know that I think you probably live and breathe some of this as well. I know that ELLKAY is big with interoperability as well, but I don't want to bait you into saying something, but I mean, I'd love to, if you have any thoughts, or you can even say you can't comment. It's fine, because I know it's a very sensitive topic.
So again, my opinions that I'm expressing are my own.
Yes.
But I think that one of the, if you want proof, because people like to have proof. Mm-hmm. If you want proof that demonstrates how difficult some systems are to get to make interoperable, the fact that RPA, and for those that aren't familiar with RPA, it's robotic process automation. Yeah. We've been doing it in healthcare forever, and it was kind of one of those things. So I remember I was talking to somebody about RPA. It's so effectively what RPA. I'll just give the 2-second explanation. But what it is that it's a computer a robot that's simulating a person browsing a website, and it's interacting with it just like a human being with clicking the mouse and downloading a document and those type of stuff. So if you're doing like a repetitive task, the fact that in a lot of cases, RPA has become the preferred mechanism of an interface is proof enough to show that there is difficulty of working in this industry. Now, granted, the RPA systems, this is not your father's RPA of screen scraping a green screen. When you add in a lot of the machine learning and the natural language processing, it's extremely impressive what these things can do. But that being said, that I can't think of the best analogy, but it's so building a computer to emulate a person to interact with a computer seems very silly.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that's kind of be definitely one of the challenges is getting data out of the system so that we can make it actionable. You wouldn't think that would be the biggest challenge, but I think that's what we're seeing more and more of. We have all of this data, and there's so much stuff. I'm a big data geek. I like being able to kind of get in there, because if you can really dig into the data and start asking questions, you can really have some very interesting perspectives and start seeing some trends. But sometimes just getting to the right data is so difficult that it becomes prohibitive.
Yep. No, I'm living and breathing it, and I'm going to certainly do a couple shows or more on it. So for those joining a little late today, my guest is Bradley Dick, Vice President of Strategic Accounts for ELLKAY. So let's dive into some of your best practices, because you have a really unique perspective. You're a consultant advisor for the industry, then come as a CIO for a large care provider, large group of orthopods, and now you're back onto the innovator side. So first of all, let's start off with just what best practices would you share with care providers so they can thrive in the coming months and years? What are a couple of things they should focus on in a couple of minutes? What do you think?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it's not tele anything, it's not remote anything, it's healthcare and patient monitoring. So, I think that everything that you need to be implementing needs to have a long-term strategy of being a multimodal. And what I mean by that is, there needs to be a single, it's everybody. In IT, we have this concept of a single pane of glass, which basically what that means is you have one place to go where you can do all the things that you need to do, and you can get all the data that you need to get to. So building solutions around having that single pane of glass is going to be very powerful, and you should really try to focus on that, because that was the one thing that we would always run into was when you had multiple systems and multiple logins and all these other things, like you immediately lost people. You immediately lost providers. And the key thing is that what we kind of have to take a step back and see is especially as technologists, I think I'm guilty, just as guilty as others, is I think sometimes we lose the focus on the mission, what the actual mission of your organization is.
Yes.
And it's the mission, especially if you're a care provider, is to take care of the patients. And how do you do that while still delivering the excellent care that you want to, without the technology getting in the way? Technology should be an enabler. I've always been very kind of pushing on that, because people like to see technology as all this stuff, but technology is an enabler. And if it's detracting from the engagement, people aren't going to use it. I mean, the reason people use iPhones is because you can basically give anybody from a 7-month-old to a 70-year-old an iPhone, and for the most part, they could probably navigate it and use it to the extent that they can get the information that they want. And building solutions around that, integrated solutions around that are very important. That being said, these are very long-term. You don't just flip a switch and have, this, panacea, yes, perfect world, solution. So, you should be building any type of enterprise architecture, any type of framework that you're going to be rolling out for delivering care models. Have a long runway for that, because you can't just be saying, okay. I mean, if you try to just build what you need for that current year, or even that year and the next year, you will never stop that that pattern. You'll just continually be building, and you'll never really kind of ever get ahead of things. So, the key thing that I would say is make sure that you have a long-term goal, but also be pragmatic. Because there were so many times where you let perfection prevent any progress. Like, oh, well, it needs to do this. It needs to do this. Like, well, it does these three things. Can we start with those three things, and then go from there? What's the MVP? What's the minimum viable product? And it's actually been really great to have that perspective from the other side of the fence, to where it's not just like, hey, my doctors need this, I need this right now. Saying like, okay, what do we need right now? What can we get to in 6 months? And where's the diff, and how do we get there?
Yep, and I love it. So I mean, I got one more question here as well, but following the mission of your organization, that's really what I'm afraid these smaller practices aren't doing. Is they don't have their mission defined. It can't just be treating the next patient. It needs to be, where do I want my practice to be in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is, and make sure that you are creating the best integrated platform to achieve those goals and achieve that mission, and bring your patients along, because other health systems are doing this, and they're going to take your patients away, I promise you, because they're giving an ultimate experience. They're engaging them electronically, they're engaging them virtually, they're giving a great experience that these patients used to get, when they bank or when they fly or when they rent a car or rent a hotel. They don't want a mundane or simple interface with their doctors. They actually want some progress there. So in their care providers in their practice. So that's what these care providers are competing against, and they've really got to step it up. So one quick final question for you before I dive into the lightning round at the end. What are a few best practices that you would share from a digital innovator perspective on how they can thrive in the next year or two? Where should they focus?
I think it's going to be very similar, and maybe also throw out a little bit of a call out to a friend of mine, or a friend of ours that I met through you.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the big challenges that you see is, and for the innovator side, meaningful use was great to get people on EMRs,
mm-hmm.
but from an innovation perspective, I think that it really stymied innovation. And when we have a lot of these regulatory controls put in place, it's are you building something that's going to be next gen, that's going to really change things, or are you just making it so that we can, that everybody can take drug orders, or have prescriptions go electronically, or try to get away from fax machines? So I think that that's kind of one of the things that we really need to be aware of is, let's we now that we have people on EMRs and EHRs and practice management systems and all the technologies there, make sure that you're staying in line with what the upcoming regulatory fronts are,
mm-hmm.
and not just what's the impending regulations,
right.
but when our dear friend Jamie Skipper from
mm-hmm.
Elevation Health,
yep.
That's a big focus, because it was very interesting. We were at Health 2.0, and we were talking to I'm not going to say it was a payer. It was the investment arm of a payer, and they had made a huge investment in a company that kind of was a one-trick pony around some regulatory programs that ended up not going very far. I think they had about a 1-year runway. So they made this massive investment in this technology company, and then they had to try to pivot it, and I think they ended up just throwing it, selling off the technology, or wrap it up into another thing. So, when you're looking at what's out there, and you're looking at what, the challenges are, don't just be looking at, what is right in front of you. Look at what's coming down the pipe from a regulatory perspective, because, we're seeing more and more, it's not just what the commercial payers are doing, but it's actually driven a lot more by the federal payers, because they
yep.
kind of seem to be they're definitely the tail that wags the dog.
Right. So I've got about 1 minute left.
Yep.
Let's touch on just real quickly. You don't have to explain it in great detail, but are you following any legislation or regulation or advice that you'd give to my listeners on the legislation front or regulation?
The interoperability and patient access rule,
mm-hmm.
I'm really excited that we're going to finally have some it remains to be seen the teeth that it will have, but
right.
Just making sure that there's a requirement for APIs in order to pull data points. I think we're starting to have the right conversations, and we're starting to ask the right questions. And by standardizing it, it's going to make a huge difference, because that's been one of our big challenges that we've had. We've had HL7 all these years, but HL7, I mean, anybody that's dealt with HL7, especially, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can have HL7 as a standard, but then, you can write custom fields in HL7, and then it's just the whole another thing. So having something standardized, having something interoperable, and what a lot of it comes down to is, the bandwidth and the network connectivity that we finally are having really changes everything.
Yep, and I completely agree. So just to give you a real life point here, I was on the phone with an EHR company this morning, and they actually brought it up on how all the interoperability that's going to be government directed, or basically, regulated, or through regulation being promulgated, they will not charge for, and they will not charge any fees, any transaction fees. So that's significant. That does show how it is pushing interoperability and the importance of it. So, but I've got to wrap up the show now. We're you and I always have a phenomenal conversation. I'm going to have you back. We have so many great things to cover. But thank you, Bradley, for joining me on the air today. I truly appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And again, I really appreciate this opportunity.
You got it. And I'll certainly have you back, my friend. And thank you all for joining us today. And please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag #ThisJustinRadio so you can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or want to hear more, all of the shows are always posted on Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Play, and TuneIn. Also, you can check out some of the updates that we've launched at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a terrific week and stay safe.